Power on.
Real-time Sovryn is go.
Woo, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here with you, Dr. Brian Sovryn, of course. And don't mind if my voice comes off a little on the weaker side, perhaps. February has been a hell of a year. Wait, February is a month, isn't it? Yeah, anyway, it felt like a year. February's been something. Both Mrs. Sovryn and I have been sick off and on, and I don't mean our usual brand of, sick. Of course, we're both mentally incredibly sick, and we love it, but and we do a lot of sick shit, but we're talking about the very unpleasant kind of illness, a bit of the flu, whatever the hell it was. And so that's actually halted a lot of what we plan to have come out in February, including a lot of the OF content, you know what I'm talking about, and really the launch overall, the proper launch of XXX Tech. But I didn't want the month to close out without anything, and really a story dropped that I think is, well, it's disconcerting for sure. I think it's game changing in a negative sense. And it's really going to bring up a lot of finer points. Now, this doesn't have to be a terribly long episode, but I do want to get into this. And basically what has happened, in fact, I'm going to read from the register right here. Rather than add a backdoor, Apple decides to kill iCloud encryption for UK peeps. So the short version here is that the United Kingdom has basically, asked Apple, hey, either build a backdoor into iCloud, or more particularly, we should call it a master key, right? Because it's not really a backdoor, it's a front door. Either build in give us the ability to access encrypted iCloud data that's protected by advanced data protection, or stop operating in the country. And Apple's response was effectively, we'll read some of the story here, but it was effectively, no, we'll just turn off advanced data protection in the United Kingdom. Let's read it here. Apple has, this is from February 24th, so this is incredibly fresh, 2025. Here we go. Apple has responded to the UK government's demand for access to its customers' data stored in iCloud by deciding to turn off its advanced data protection, that's ADP, end-to-end encryption service for UK users. Cupertino's decision, that being Apple, came after a row that began earlier this month amid reports that the UK Home Office had requested a backdoor to access data belonging to UK citizens under the auspices of the Investigatory Powers Bill. Stanley, breaking in for a second. Now, if you think the UK is the only one that has this kind of bill going, well, as the old saying goes, I have some bridges in China to sell you. But anyway, continuing on. Quote, we are gravely disappointed that the protections provided by ADP will not be available to our customers in the UK, given the continuing rise of data breaches and other threats to customer privacy, end quote, Apple told the Register in a statement. The end-to-end encryption afforded by ADP is therefore off the table for UK residents, meaning both Apple and law enforcement agencies that secure a subpoena or some other suitable court order will be able to obtain requested iCloud-hosted data without the need for direct backdoor access. Apple noted that some data stored in iCloud is still protected by encryption at rest, including health info, iMessages, and FaceTime calls. iCloud backups, storage, photos, notes, reminders, Safari bookmarks, Siri shortcuts, wallet passes, voice memos, and freeform digital whiteboard files, however, will no longer be end-to-end protected, meaning they can be read by Apple and those who subpoena it. And to be clear, this is all about people's data stored in iCloud, encrypted in such a way that not even Apple can unlock. It's not about communications in transit, which remains protected. So basically what we have here, first off, okay, let's talk a little bit about ADP. So there's more to the story, and I will say quickly that as far as those in the UK who already have ADP turned on, okay, there will at a later date they will be forced to turn it off. So it's turn it off now, or at a later date, Apple's going to be able to effectively flip the switch on it. Now, that should not be disregarded. What I mean by that is that factoid should be paid attention to, that Apple will force ADP to be turned off. Now, what does that look like when they force the matter? We might not find out, because this is somewhat, I'm sure, Apple kind of trying to stall, right? They're like, okay, well, if you already have it on, we're going to leave it on until we really have to turn it off. Maybe they're hoping that somebody somewhere is going to step in, whether it's within the UK or outside of it, to force the matter that would allow the continued use of ADP. But I don't know that things are going to turn out that way. But, yes, I can imagine that's what Apple is hoping for. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about ADP. So, an iPhone, because this raises a lot of, this brings a lot of things to light, in my opinion, around, okay, did this encryption provided through advanced data protection through ADP, was this actual end-to-end encryption? Did Apple already have a master key and so on, blah, blah, blah? Okay, this answers, I think, a lot of questions about that. So I have said ADP initially launched, I want to say the end of 2022. It was with iOS 16.2, I believe. And then it became more widely available in 2023, around there. And as soon as they announced it, I will admit I got interested in Mac or, in Apple products again, whether it's a MacBook, whether it's, an iPhone, whatever, because this is the right move. Now, there were always three things that were not covered by this end-to-end encryption. Okay, so everything in iCloud except for your email, your contacts, and your calendar data. If those were all, propagated through Apple, all of that, and thus stored on iCloud, none of those three things were protected, by ADP. I didn't really care about that. Okay. Like that didn't mean that much to me. Reason being, if I'm going to, encrypt my email. Okay. Now, granted, Apple Mail, I think could that do S-MIME? Yes, that could do S-MIME. I'm going to be doing that with PGP, and I'm probably going to be, running it through a different email client, even than Apple Mail, if I'm doing that. I mean, there's a great argument because, to run your email through iCloud, because if you're paying for iCloud Plus, okay, which I think pretty much everybody does, if you have an iPhone, just because otherwise you're constantly getting notifications that, oh, we can't back up all of your data, right? But with, if you're using iCloud Plus, they give you, like, you can use three of your own domains, okay, and have, I think, three, or maybe it's even more than three domains, but you can only have three addresses for each domain. Anyway, it was a super simple setup to actually run, like a lot of my domain names through iCloud. It worked very well. So I'm not against using, iCloud for email. It's actually one of the better options out there. A lot better than what Outlook offers you. Of course, there's, yes, you can use Proton Mail and all. Look, I've done them all. Really, like I really, really have. Fastmail, long time, on board with Sovryn Tech. I mean, like, I've done them all. Okay. And I'm just saying iCloud was really, really solid for that. But as far as email goes, like, email is minus PGP, which you're not going to do PGP encrypted email between, like, you and your hotel bonus points or something, right? Okay. I hope that's obvious, but whatever. Email is inherently a, non-secure technology. I mean, you can do PGP right for sure, and I'm not saying don't, okay, but I'm just saying, but at a base level, it's a non-secure technology that, like, it not being protected by ADP, again, didn't mean much to me. Contacts, yeah, okay. And if you really wanted to, you can use, there's encrypted contact apps out there that you could, use more for that. And calendar, I'm not surprised by that either. And in general, if you want, like, say other apps to be able to interact with your contacts list or to interact with your, your calendar, which a lot of people do, then yeah, you can't end-to-end encrypt those. Okay, so Apple not encrypting mail, contacts, and calendar data, like, again, not a surprise. And, for people to functionally use it, or for it to be able to use by third parties, which a lot of people want it to, it makes sense. Okay. So I never begrudged Apple that they didn't do that. What was far more impressive was that they were end-to-end encrypting photos. They were end-to-end encrypting, like what you wrote in Pages, your Apple Notes, all of these things that are very rare to have like a high-end end-to-end encryption solution for. Now, some companies since the launch of ADP have kind of, come in and taken, there's like Standard Notes, right, that can do encrypted notes. Of course, Proton also offers, Proton Drive, which does have a document editor now, and that basically could function as and it does function as an end-to-end encrypted document storage. So anyway, I don't need to get into like a big history around ADP, but the bottom line is that when ADP was launched in 2022, I got interested in Apple again, because I was like, oh, this is the right stuff. And the analysis had been done at the time that, oh yeah, this is implemented really, really well. And so I have said for the past few years, we're in 2025 now, I've said for the past few years that, with an Apple device, like the main thing, like the main winners for an iPhone is, of course, Apple Pay, which still blows away Google Pay. Okay. AirPods are very good at what they do. And especially because they're open, or, when you get the supposed mid-range, they're not mid-range, they're just open ear. Open ear AirPods are like the best open ear headphones out there, as long as you don't mind your blood-brain barrier getting fried, by Bluetooth. And then ADP. Like, those are the three things: Apple Wallet, AirPods, and advanced data protection were, like, in my opinion, the three reasons to use an iPhone, to use an Apple, or to be in the Apple ecosystem. Okay. Well, here's obviously the rub on all of this. ADP is, okay, so we can say, well, it's just dead in the UK and hopefully somebody's going to step in and it'll get reinstated. I don't care if it gets reinstated in the UK. And I'm not sweating whether or not it's going to get deactivated by other nation states around the world. It's a good bet that it will start getting, deactivated, just like in the UK. Like, probably France will be next. Pick your other socialist. Every country's socialist, especially the US. All right. So, just pick whatever territory you want. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen sooner or later. Okay. I know everybody's like, the Trump administration is furious that the UK has done this. And it's like, no, yeah, maybe they're furious that somehow the UK is like spying on people, but what, you think the US doesn't want to do the same thing? Fuck, of course they do. US intelligence agencies spend probably billions a year trying to figure out how to crack into smartphones in general, but certainly the iPhone. And this isn't conspiracy theory. This is fact. We have the documentation, and we know from the companies like Celebrite and others who actually create the technology that allow you to crack into smartphones. We know how much they spend on trying to break into iPhones. So there's no good guy here. Okay. And there certainly isn't a good guy in Apple. Why do I say that? Aha. This gets right to it. And I'm doing this episode because I have not heard, and believe me, I listen to so many tech shows, I have not heard a single other tech show talk about this point right here. What Apple has clearly stated is that at a later date, they will force ADP off on those UK citizens who have yet to turn off ADP. So basically, at Apple's leisure, Apple can kill that functionality, even though, they spend so much goddamn time saying, well, hey, your stuff's encrypted. We don't have the keys. Now, is that true? Actually, yes, that is true. Okay, like they couldn't just look at your data because it's protected by said, such and so forth keys. Now we don't know what it's going to look like if and when Apple is forced to turn off ADP on UK residents' iPhones and devices. We don't does it delete everything in iCloud if they don't do it a certain way? We're not sure right now. But the bottom line is that Apple can remove this feature at the drop of a hat. And you lose all of that encryption. Or you lose all of your data, one or the other. This isn't a broken promise. The reality is, as solid, and I'm not kidding, as good as the encryption was, as good as the implementation was that Apple did, if they can just fucking turn it off, it doesn't matter. The best encryption in the world means nothing if you can't control it. Fuck you, Apple. Fuck you, Google. I don't care. Pick the goddamn company. This is such an important point. As we're going into launching XXX Tech, and I mentioned in the last episode that we did, when Mrs. Sovryn was asking me about, what's going to be, with the show, or, what's the show going to be about? What are you going to talk about? And I said, yeah, it's going to be a lot like Sovryn Tech, but it's going to expand. There's going to be other things. And there's some themes that need to get discussed right now because the tech landscape has changed dramatically from when I started podcasting in 2012. Here is one of the key things that doesn't really change as far as my messaging goes, but I think that needs to be made abundantly fucking clear in 2025 and going into the future. Okay? There is really no point. There is no point in, because look, Sovryn Tech fell into this kind of for a little while. It's like, Microsoft does this. Don't ever use Microsoft products. Oh, Apple does this. Don't ever use Apple's products. Oh, Google does this. Don't ever use Google's products. I mean, you jump from tech giant to tech giant, right? Oh, don't use their shit. Don't use Samsung stuff. Don't use that because they did this. They did that. They do all these things wrong, complete negligence or downright maliciousness, whatever it ended up having to be. Look, here's the deal. Okay, there is no point in talking about separate fucking companies. Apple and Google are the same thing. What do I mean by that? I mean that really there's only two types of digital, or shall we say computational technologies, computer technologies. There's two types of computer science. How about that? Okay. There's open source and there's malware. That's it. There's no difference. Apple, Google, Microsoft, whatever. If it's not open source, it's malware, to quote Richard Stallman. Because otherwise, it's effectively the same. Yeah, I switched. I'm pretty much using Android as my daily driver right now anyway. Which, by the way, Google's implementation of that is not open source, to be abundantly clear. But for a while, yeah, I was using an iPhone hard. I'm like, okay, yep, good. They're securing everything. And again, look, clearly, if ADP allowed for a backdoor for the UK government, then we wouldn't have heard about any of this. Because these companies get subpoenaed. The government says you can't talk about it. So basically, the only reason this is even getting discussed is because Apple, basically treated ADP like a warrant canary and said, well, we got to get rid of it. And so clearly, what happened here. Okay. Now, we also know because of the somewhat transparency of the act, the legislation, that UK was pushing here that led to this. Okay. But ADP clearly did its job. All right. So do I want to give the devil its due? Do I give, wait. The devil's never mind. Do I want to give Apple, or let's just say, do I want to give Apple some credit? Okay, sure. Yeah, they did this right. Fine. Give them credit for that. But then if, like I said, if they can just turn it off, then it doesn't matter. All the protections in the world mean nothing if it's just a switch that can get flipped off. And that's why I'm saying to you, okay, it doesn't matter if it's Apple, Google, Microsoft, whatever. It doesn't matter what company you're talking about, doesn't matter what product you're talking about. It's either open source or it's not. If it's not open source, it's effectively malware. That point, I mean, Richard Stallman has made that point a million times. It has never been more clear than right now. So don't tell me, oh, I use this company because X, Y, Z. I use this because blah, blah, blah. That conversation's over. It's over. It's either open source or it's not yours. End of story. And I don't see, and like, I mean, I hear tech commentators saying, it's like, oh, this is Apple capitulating. This is none of that shit matters. Who the hell cares what Apple's doing? Or, you know, what the attitude is of Apple or whatever. The main point of this story is that Apple could just turn this stuff off willy-nilly without your consent. That's the story. Nobody's talking about it. Treat things accordingly. Now, some people have brought up, and I'll be honest, you know, when you go through the process of setting up an Apple account, I mean, that, you know, I've never been abducted by aliens and put through an anal probe, but that's about the closest thing I could think of, you know, like I felt invaded going through that process, but I do it for you. I mean, that was the worst. Like Google, setting up a Google account's fucking nothing. You know, I mean, yeah, they're going to, you know, collect everything about you afterwards, but I mean, it's fucking nothing. But setting up an Apple account, horrible. One of the absolute worst experiences. I mean, they grab fucking everything. They need everything, you know, like right up front. I mean, really, like when you go into an Apple store, like, you know, don't even bother with the trench coat, man. Just go in there, open, you know, open that baby up. Don't worry. And they're not wearing sunglasses either. Anyway, you know, going through that process, I didn't realize that you can actually, okay, so now I knew that when you're setting up a MacBook that you don't have to put in your Apple ID. That I knew. I didn't know that when you're setting up an iPhone that you don't have to actually turn on iCloud backup. I was not, admittedly, I was not aware of that. And maybe it was just because I was just stunned by the absolute barrage of the amount of information you have to, you know, hand over. I mean, I imagine a DNA test was in there somewhere, but no, I'm kidding about that. But that's how bad it is. Okay. But I didn't realize that you could actually turn off iCloud syncing and, you know, like iCloud backups overall. Like I really didn't. But apparently that is possible. So if you want to keep your shit somewhat private, that's basically what you have to do. But admittedly, I would argue that at that point, as I've talked about in recent episodes cybersecurity episodes that we did throughout 2024, you know, the advantage of an Apple device is that, you know, when you log into your Apple ID with, like, say you lose or, you know, some thug, like a cop, some thug like, you know, like a military serviceman. I'm sorry. They're all the same. Somebody, somehow you lose your iPhone and you have to get another one. You know, you log in with your Apple ID on that new iPhone and everything's there. That's not true for Android, right? Because not everybody, I know Android does, you know, Google's Android does do end-to-end encrypted backups, but it's really touch and go with that because Google doesn't, unlike Apple, Google doesn't force every app to, you know, like third-party app to actually use Google's end-to-end encrypted backup. So it's a crapshoot of what you're going to get when you log into with your Google account into, you know, another Android phone. It's really a crapshoot as to what you're going to get on that phone, you know, transferred over from your old one. As to where with an iPhone, you get everything. And it's an impressive feat. Like, that's cool. Okay. Because then you're not so much sweating what the fuck happens to your device. Right. And I treat that, you know, as an advantage overall. Okay. So to have some modicum of where your data on device can be more private, which would, in this sense, what we're talking about here, entail not turning on iCloud. I feel like you lose one of the great advantages of iOS devices. So there's that. It's all trade-off, folks. It's all trade-off. It's all personal thresholds. Okay. But the important thing that I just want to drive home. We don't have to go much longer on this because this is the point. Your shit's either open source or it's not yours. That's it. You can tell me, oh, Apple does this really well. They do this. Okay. But they can take it all away at any given moment. I mean, that's not even getting into the fact that, when being subpoenaed by the government, like Apple could be forced to basically deactivate your Apple account, your Apple ID, like gone, then everything's gone. That's certainly its own problem. Google can do this too. Microsoft can do this too. All of them can do this. Unless you're going with like a full-on open source solution, something, Linux, BSD, whatever flavor that, you want to do. Those are the options you've got. Now, am I making an argument that that's what you should do and you should only use Linux and you should only, no, I'm not saying that. Should you be putting Graphene OS on your Pixel device? Yeah. No, look, it's all, like I said, it's all personal thresholds. It's all what you have to deal with. But I would recommend, okay, that you internalize this reality. And many of my listeners, look, you folks already know this stuff. You've been listening. You've been on this journey, with me for over 10 years. Okay. You know the score. But for anyone who's new, internalize this. If it's not open source, you don't control it. You don't own it. And who knows where the hell it is. And with that, I mean, hey, if this turns around, okay, great. But then we still know now, thankfully. I'm so glad that we know that, Apple will, did we already, assume this? Sure. But now we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Apple will can turn off all encryption at the drop of a hat. Go out there and act accordingly, folks. I'll see all of you on the other side.